So, number one reason why moms should be leaders in computing education. We've been doing it wrong for so long. This is the percentage of women in majors that are predominantly male. If you notice in computer science education, we were doing it right till about 1984. We're talking about 1984 again, right? And then what happened? The personal computer came on the scene. And with the personal computer, basically there was a lot of marketing that was basically telling people to buy computers for the boys as if they were toys. The other number two reason is that actually women are already moms, actually. Beyond women, their moms are actually already leaders in computer science education. They were among the first that started taking national initiatives when they started realizing the disparities in marginalized communities and started seeing this as a form of segregation, of maintaining the segregation from the previous generations that we just heard from a speaker. I also heard another staggering statistic as why we need to do this. 91% of heads of households in public housing, and head of households with children in public housing are women. 91% in the United States. So turn that into numbers and it ends up being around 232,000 households. Most of public housing is actually in the South. And then I started looking at children. How many do we have in these households? It's really hard to say. So I started looking it up and I found that we have 11 million children in poverty. And since the pandemic, after the pandemic, it's actually gone up to 5.5 million. Basically, 5.5 are the ones that are in extreme or severe poverty. It took a hurricane for me to understand the systemic inequities that exist in education systems, even though I grew up and went to school in Baltimore. It was basically seeing that the help wasn't coming fast enough, and this happens. But you start to realize that this thing that oh my gosh, this always happens. I was really trying, I was not going to cry about this. You start to realize that you live in this little bubble and the other people live in bubbles, and if you don't cross those bubbles, we're never going to make a difference in what we do. And the other thing I wanted to tell you about Puerto Rico is that after that, basically 500,000 of the families left because that left a blackout that's been the longest in national history, and basically that blackout was over a year, and this is in a U.S. territory, right? So basically, children were left without education for an entire year. And then after that, what happened was, After that, what happened was the fact that, many different things. I'm trying to get back focused on this because sorry. Thank you. So after that, you started seeing things like waterborne diseases. What is this? In a U.S. people there are U.S. citizens. How do you see that? How do you see waterborne diseases, people dying of that? So I then started looking at what was happening because there were all these instances. As a person who actually does technology, I was looking for Shahidi, which is this open source platform. And what that platform does is actually emergency disaster management. And with that disaster management, what I started realizing is that people were assuming that people knew how to use a phone. It's my hair, sorry. And so this is called digital determinants, when you start making assumptions about a population and their use. And this happens with the elderly, it happens with people with disabilities, and it happens with people in poverty. We just assume that they know how to use a cell phone and how they can make the most of it. So that's another reason why we have to have mothers, because basically what I saw and witnessed in Puerto Rico was a whole town that came together and ousted the governor. They demanded more for the ones that stayed. So that led us to the Arecibo C3 STEM Center. C3 stands for Ciencia, Computación y Comunidad. That's science, computing, and community. Because I wanted to basically make something out of those communities. They shouldn't be just to make themselves survive. They need to be something. We need to empower them. And that was part of the thing that we have here. What happened before the hurricane, I want to show you a picture of the telescope before the hurricane. And it didn't actually collapse immediately. Some cables collapsed. And it didn't actually collapse until 2020. But this is what it looked like on the other side. And this is what we're dealing with now. And so what we want to do is turn this into a top-notch learning center for the community. Actually make it accessible to the majority of the community. Part of this, the first step to solving this, is actually doing it here. And I was just so shocked because I said, okay, I'm not going to Baltimore. We're going to do it a little bit easier and go to Annapolis. And so we started trying to get into these public housing units because they're going through transformations to make the public housing. They're knocking it down and creating mixed income. And what happened with that, when we got there, is we found that in public housing here in Annapolis, the median income in that community is $12,000 annually. And around it, it's 1 square mile. And around it, it's 142,000. So we couldn't get there because obviously there are people protecting that community. And so you need to gain their trust. So we went to the community next door. And the community next door is where people who come out of that public housing are living. And it was great because we had collaboration from the resident manager and the resident services manager, and she basically connected us to a church. So we started in the basement of a church. And what we did there was something I'd never done before, which is human-centered computing. We started co-creating with that community what kind of a class would they need so that they would succeed. And so that we could get them to be leaders, and we wanted them to be teachers even. The idea originally was to be teachers because that's how I became a computer scientist. I started teaching computing. Within one semester, within a year, they had actually opened a new space. They didn't go through the full transformation. They were kind of in the middle of the transformation, and they made this center that they had into a computing center. And we got to teach the next semester there. And we've now actually started, we have a wonderful person working with us in Puerto Rico, and she got us into public housing in Puerto Rico. And now we have basically a cohort in Puerto Rico that we're going to start with and do the co-creation. If you notice one thing, these are not the mothers. And there's not many of them because the mothers are so busy trying to get their kids, taking care of the kids, taking care of their lives, and taking care of trying to get them out. And actually, they do a lot of helping the community. But you know the ones who watch out for the kids? They end up being the grandmothers. And so we actually noticed that even in Puerto Rico, the ones who came out for this are grandmothers. So we started looking at the statistics and saying, wow, how many grandmothers do we have? How many older people? And we found out that families with income are families with children are 35%, as well as the elderly. And then there's a whole 15% of people that are disabled without being elderly. And obviously, a lot of the ones that we met that are the elderly in assisted housing were also disabled or had disabilities. And let's be real, we're all going to have disabilities when we get older. So actually doing this research is important for our future too. So what we started doing, we created a curriculum. We thought, okay, let's put 2 days of tech. We'll start with typing in the morning, but we'll break it up, and we'll let them create decide what they wanted. And what we found is that they were one of them was a former IBMer at one point. Another one was, couldn't remember how to use a phone and had trouble actually trying to schedule an appointment to get a driver's license. And another one actually was very, very good. But they were bored with that. They didn't want to do that. So we started doing creative technologies. And they loved that because they thought they weren't creative. They thought they couldn't do anything and create anything. So it actually started showing them that they can. And they were using the creative tech, and that's how they built their skills. The other thing we started doing, and this was an international student that came to do basically some work with me for credit. So she's coming over and she's building our entrepreneurship curriculum because that was her passion. And she got it so right. She's like, you've got to bring entrepreneurs that look like them. And so we started doing that. And we asked them, okay, what do you want to do? So we found entrepreneurs that were kind of in the same field. And we took them on field trips because one thing we've realized, they can't leave because they don't have licenses. And then we did the pilot, the actual pilot, the second semester. And there what we realized is we asked them, do you have computers at home that you could work from? But what happened is that all their computers had tons of viruses, and so they really couldn't access them. So we started doing cyber hygiene, and we brought a cybersecurity educator with us. And then what really amazing thing is that they started putting, oh, well, look at what we can do with the makerspace, with the creative tech, and how can we make it on entrepreneurship? Because the idea that we want to do is that they make it sustainable, that we are there for a while, but then we leave, and they can teach the classes. But then when we got to the teaching, we realized, oh yeah, that's right. Teaching it took us a while to learn teaching. It will take us a while to teach them too. So this is basically what we ended up. We started to see that our undergrads, in that second year, we brought undergrads with us to help because we realized that just having one teacher was not enough. You always had to have at least 2 people. So it was basically grads with undergrads, where the grads were doing their research in human-centered computing, and the undergrads were basically helping them out and helping with the digital skills. And what was really amazing and what we didn't expect is that every single undergraduate ended up going into the master's program. And then every single master's that worked with us applied for the Ph.D. Now that's a sample size of 5, right? But I think it shows a lot of promise for what could happen and how we can bring PhDs and the local community into our university if we start telling them we're going to be creating these community computing centers in your region. And so one of ours was actually a transfer. And he got us connections to Anne Arundel Community College. And so we took the ladies to Anne Arundel Community College, because at first we were thinking, oh, they have to come to UMBC to take classes, but if they can't drive, that's not possible. So what we did was take them over to ACC, and we presented them to, showed them around, and they were so excited about doing micro-credentialing there. And so we started thinking this cycle differently. Maybe the mothers will go to ACC, but maybe their children will end up coming to UMBC. And the other thing that they asked us for, we need psychologists. We need some psychologists. And we realized that this part of reaching out, we can't spend all that time building these connections. So we started realizing maybe what we need to do is talk to the social scientists at ACC. And one of our students, we took him to a meeting because we wanted to say, how can we create a pathway from Anne Arundel Community College over here through these community computing centers. He didn't realize that it took over an hour, even though it's only 8 miles away, for these women to get to the community college. He didn't realize that my student had taken over 2 of their associate's degrees, but had never had a research experience. So the importance of us building these opportunities for them to do research in any of these disciplines would be fantastic for them. So what does it help for us? What does it do for us as professors? We get to do transdisciplinary research. Transdisciplinary research basically tries to solve the complex problems in our society through multidisciplinary approaches. So basically, these B2G centers, their missions now are to reduce educational, health, and financial disparities by providing digital and tech education to these marginalized communities. And basically now what we're trying to do, instead of trying to making them teachers, we're trying to make them leaders. And what we want to do is actually make them a place for our students to make money, right? This is important to the mayor. Fran became one of our biggest, telling everybody, we started to be invited to these centers, and Fran was telling everybody about the importance of this for their community. One of our students that came to visit actually decided to start doing social entrepreneurship for mothers because she had a cosmetology license and she thought, maybe if I teach them how to do this, and she actually won the startup competition on the entrepreneurship here because she said, I can make a social enterprise teaching these young mothers how to do their hair. And lastly, we got an invitation to the mayor's house as a thank you, and he gave us all a citation. I didn't realize a citation could be a good thing. So in closing, I just want to say that I believe that this is an opportunity for us to make a difference in our communities. It's an opportunity to give our students the opportunity to do cross-cultural communication, learn how to teach, and learn how to do research in HCC and computer science education. And it's something that if we do this right, we can uplift the community around us and bring them into our research programs. Thank you.